Chapter 1467. You guys agreed on this, right? You're all using such lousy excuses. Jing Yu's mouth twitched when she heard Feng Ling's words. Her eyes were filled with confusion. Why were they all using such excuses? Feng Ling frowned slightly when she heard Jing Yu's words. I heard that Su Yu and Feng Maching are here too. Where are they? Su Yu should be in the tent over there. As for Feng Maching, he's probably wooing his wife. Jing Yu raised her eyebrows silently. Her eyes were filled with joy. Feng Ling's eyes widened when she heard Jing Yu's words. What did you say? Feng Ling's eyes were filled with astonishment. He might be wooing his husband. Go take a look for yourself. Jing Yu yawned lazily. The faint look in her eyes made Feng Ling's frown deepen. Just as Jing Yu said, she went to see Su Yu first before looking for Feng Maching. She immediately understood what Jing Yu meant. Little Xiao, what do you want to eat today? In the tent on the other side, Feng Ling and Feng Yu saw this scene when they stepped in. In the tent, Feng Maching, the #1 assassin, was actually serving someone. Hellion Theo was about to commit suicide. Ayaya. I know. You must want to eat me, right? Feng Maching said shyly as he twisted his waist. You're so naughty. You're so annoying. Hellion Theo gripped the pen in his hand tightly. But I like how naughty you are. Feng Maching continued. Crack. A clear sound rang out. The pen in Hellion Theo's hand was broken by Hellion Theo. Don't be so agitated. I can secretly give you a kiss. As Feng Maching spoke, he moved closer to Hellion Theo. Hellion Theo was completely enraged. Without any hesitation, he reached out to grab Feng Maching's collar and threw him out without any hesitation. Feng Maching took advantage of the momentum and flew to a wooden stake at the side. He steadied himself and landed lightly on the ground. After Feng Maching steadied himself, he turned his head to look at Hellion Theo's tent. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. There was not the slightest bit of displeasure on his face. He lowered his head indifferently and raised his hand to tidy up his clothes. Only then did he look at Feng Ling, who was completely dumbfounded. Feng Ling, you were also tricked by Su Yu? Feng Maching looked at Feng Ling from head to toe as he spoke. The way he spoke was extremely normal. Feng Ling stared at Feng Maching for a full 30 seconds before she reacted. Feng Ling swallowed her saliva silently. She looked at Feng Maching with a pale face. How is it? Feng Maching calmly raised his eyebrows and looked at Feng Ling with a calm expression. Ahem. Feng Ling coughed silently and said, It's nothing. Seeing that Tower Master Feng is so busy, I won't disturb you any further. Goodbye. After Feng Ling finished speaking, she pulled Feng Yu and left. After Xing Yi told Jing Yu what had happened, Jing Yu laughed hysterically in Xiao Chen's arms. Ha! Feng Maching really didn't let me down. Jing Yu laughed heartily. Xiao Chen shook his head helplessly and asked, Aren't you afraid that Hellion Theo will be angered to death by what you've done? Why would he be angry? Jing Yu sat up straight and looked at Xiao Chen seriously. I'm preparing for his marriage. He will definitely thank me in the future. Chapter 1468. Besides, Jing Yu suddenly changed the topic and looked at Xiao Chen warily. If it weren't for Hellion Theo, Feng Maching would be keeping an eye on you. You're my man. What would I do if someone else snatched you away? When Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu's words, he immediately laughed. The corners of his lips curled up beautifully. When Jing Yu saw Xiao Chen's smile, the expression in her eyes softened. She opened her arms and threw herself into Xiao Chen's embrace. I want to monopolize you all to myself. When Jing Yu said those words in a coquettish tone, Xiao Chen's smile deepened. He tightened his arms around Jing Yu and let out a satisfied sigh. With the arrival of Feng Ling and Feng Yu, the journey became even more lively. The originally depressing journey became a little more fun because of these people. During this period of time, Feng Yu had also been trained by Jing Yu. Now, whenever she saw Jing Yu and Xiao Chen, she would run away. She was originally a troublemaker, but now, she would provoke Jing Yu from time to time. Now, she didn't dare to say anything. When they reached Yangzhou from Tokyo, the sunny weather became even hotter. Yangzhou City. It had been more than half a year. Looking at Yangzhou City from afar, Jingyu and Xiaochen were a little dazed. They tilted their heads slightly and looked at each other. The corners of their mouths curled up slightly. "Let's take down Yangzhou City," Xiaochen said calmly. Then he led a group of people away arrogantly. However, what surprised Xiaochen and Jingyu was that there wasn't a single guard outside Yangzhou City. As Xiaochen and Jingyu's group approached, they suddenly saw the tightly shut gates of Yangzhou City slowly open. A woman slowly walked out of the city with many people following behind her. Jingyu recognized the woman who came out. Fengju. Jingyu looked at the beautiful woman wearing a light blue robe standing in front of the city gates. Her eyes widened in astonishment. Benefactor. Fengju looked straight at Jingyu and Xiaochen with a faint smile in her eyes. She said, "When Benefactor left, you said that if you came back to Yangzhou in the future, I would open the gates for you. Today, when I heard that Benefactor had arrived, I specially came here to open the gates and welcome Benefactor into the city." When Fengju finished speaking, Jingyu's eyes were filled with astonishment. She looked at the petite figure standing in front of the city gates. The people behind Fengju didn't say a word after hearing Fengju's words. Looking at them, there was only one reason. Were these people Fengju's people? If Jingyu didn't see wrong, these people were the leaders of Yangzhou City. How could they become Fengju's subordinates? If Fengju's martial arts were high, then it would be fine. However, Fengju was a weak woman who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. She was only good at playing the zither. Who would have thought that she had such skills? "Thank you." Jingyu bowed slightly to Fengju. The corner of her mouth hooked up into a faint smile, making Fengju lower his head. Jingyu and Xiaochen's group easily entered Yangzhou City. Yangzhou City was still bustling with activity. However, with the arrival of Jingyu and Xiaochen's group, Yangzhou City fell into a state of tension. Seeing that they were fully armed, many commoners fled. Naturally, they were afraid that the flames of war would spread to them. Chapter 1469. In Yangzhou City, Jingyu and Xiaochen were settled down by Fengju. They stayed in the best restaurant and prepared a banquet for Jingyu and Xiaochen. Jingyu looked at Fengju and felt that her spirit was extraordinary. "I didn't think that after not seeing you for half a year, Miss Fengju would become so extraordinary." Jingyu looked at Fengju and praised her. "If it wasn't for Benefactor's words, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today." When Fengju heard Jingyu's praise, she felt that it was strange. If it was in the past, Fengju wouldn't have believed that she could do what she did. But now, she had truly done it. "It's your own ability." Jingyu shook her head and said, "Don't be so polite, just call me Jingyu." "You should call me Benefactor, the 9th Imperial Concubine." Fengju turned her head and looked at Xiaochen. She lowered her head and said, "9th Emperors, I didn't think that I would meet the famous 9th Emperors and 9th Imperial Concubine. It is an honor." "Ah." Jingyu laughed and looked at Fengju. "Aren't you afraid?" "What is there to be afraid of? I admire the two of you from the bottom of my heart." Fengju looked at Jingyu and Xiaochen and said sincerely, "You two are so loyal to each other. Even if we don't know each other, I will still help you." Miss Fengju really can't be compared to ordinary girls," Qinggu said with a smile. "He is indeed a member of our Jianghu," Feng Ling, who was at the side, said in admiration. "Young master, if this little girl enters, I will definitely have to thank you." Fengju looked at Qinggu and said sincerely, "If it wasn't for you taking my pulse and telling me the cause of my illness, I'm afraid I would be in a different state now." No. Qinggu quickly waved his hand and said, "I am ashamed to say that I knew the cause of your illness that day and was unable to treat it. However, because I had other matters to attend to, it was inconvenient for me to stay for a long time and not treat your illness. I am truly apologetic." "Gongzi, you're already doing me a great favor by telling me the cause of my illness." Fengju naturally understood why Jingyu and Xiaochen were so anxious at that time. At that time, the 9th Emperors and the 9th Imperial Concubine were practically being beaten by the whole world. If he couldn't even save himself, How could he care about the lives of others? In the time it took for them to talk, they had already downed several bowls of wine. The hall was very lively as they talked about the past. Halfway through, the wind Jew played the zither to liven things up, raising the liveliness of the banquet to the highest point. Everyone chatted heartily, and in the end, they helped each other back to their residences. Miss Feng Ju, are you okay? In the corridor of the attic, Feng Ju's body was a bit unstable. Jing Lang, who was walking out from behind, saw it and quickly went up to support Feng Ju. Feng Ju heard Jing Lang's voice and turned her head to look suspiciously. However, because her head was very dizzy, she couldn't recognize who the person in front of her was. She unhappily frowned and raised her hand to shake off Jing Lang's hand and said, "Don't touch me, I can walk by myself." "Miss Feng Ju, you're drunk." Jing Lang looked at Feng Ju's appearance and sighed deeply. "I'm not drunk." Feng Ju seemed to be very happy as she smiled. She turned her head and stared at Jing Lang with her pitch-black eyes and said, "I saw my benefactor. I'm happy. I finally saw them and was able to help them. I'm happy." Chapter 1470. Yes. As long as you're happy. Jing Lang responded to Feng Ju's words and supported her as they walked towards her room. Jing Lang stood outside Feng Ju's room and stopped in his tracks. How could he casually enter a woman's room? Jing Lang thought as he tilted his head slightly and saw that Feng Ju had already fallen into a semi-comatose state. He had no choice but to bend down and carry Feng Ju in his arms before walking into the room. This was probably the first woman that Jing Lang had come into contact with after carrying his sister. The simple and elegant layout of the room was filled with a faint fragrance. This fragrance was very similar to the fragrance on Feng Ju's body. Her soft body made Jing Lang's cheeks turn slightly red. Jing Lang lowered his head and looked at Feng Ju. Feng Ju's flushed face made Jing Lang purse his lips. He gently placed Feng Ju on the bed and covered him with a blanket. He turned around and left the room. He didn't do anything inappropriate. On the other side, Feng Maching was casually sitting on the roof with a jug of wine in his hand. He looked up at the full moon and the expression on his face changed rapidly. There seemed to be no expression on his face at all. However, when he looked at the pitch-black starry sky, he felt a strong sense of sadness in Feng Maching's eyes. When Hellion Theo walked back to his room, he heard a strange sound. After being tormented by Feng Maching recently, Hellion Theo was starting to scare himself. The slightest movement could instantly alert Hellion Theo. When he heard this sound, Hellion Theo turned around and looked up. There was indeed someone at the place where the sound came from. The person who was wearing a bright red robe and sitting on the roof was casually drinking from a wine jar in his hand. There seemed to be no expression in his pair of calm eyes. His usual appearance had faded away. Hellion Xiao had never seen Feng Maching like this before. The sound Hellion Theo heard came from when the jug of wine was placed on the roof tile. Hellion Theo looked at Feng Maching, who was sitting on the roof and drinking, and frowned slightly. He didn't know why Feng Maching was drinking alone. Seeing Feng Maching like this, Hellion Theo hesitated for a moment before silently turning around and returning to his room. At a time like this, it was better not to look for trouble himself. It was rare that she didn't bother him. The next morning, when the sky was bright, everyone started to wake up one after another. In the room, Jing Yu was lying in Xiao Chen's arms. She moved her body lazily and turned her head. Her eyes were slightly narrowed, and there was a look of laziness in her eyes as if she had just woken up. Xiao Chen's voice rang out. Xiao Chen's large hand grabbed Jing Yu's waist. What happened? When Jing Yu heard Xiao Chen's voice, she turned around and met Xiao Chen's eyes. His dark eyes were filled with tenderness as he looked at Jing Yu. Nothing. Xiao Chen closed his eyes slightly and sniffed Jing Yu's hair. That familiar faint scent made Xiao Chen feel incomparably peaceful. When Jing Yu and Xiao Chen woke up, the sky was already bright. Jing Yu looked at the endless blue sky. Jing Yu's heart trembled a little. In this bustling city, it was so peaceful and comfortable. Xiao Chen, have you sent a message to Wu Fu Bei? Standing in the attic, Jing Yu tilted her head slightly and looked at Xiao Chen. She asked, more than half a year ago, I contacted Xiao Bai. I'm afraid he's prepared now. Chapter 1471. I've already asked Xing Yi to send the message. If nothing goes wrong, they should be here soon. Xiao Chen slowly nodded in response. Jing Yu felt relieved after hearing this. The 9th Emperors, the 9th Imperial Concubine. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen were standing in the corridor of the attic talking when they heard a voice call out from behind them. It was Feng Ju. Today, Feng Ju was wearing plain white clothes and her hair was casually combed. However, she gave off a very elegant feeling. Miss Feng Ju. Jing Yu turned her head and smiled at Feng Ju as a greeting. I drank a little too much yesterday and woke up at this time. Please don't take offense. Feng Ju seemed a little embarrassed as she slightly bowed to Jing Yu. It's nothing. Jing Yu didn't mind as she slightly waved her hand and said, Miss Feng Ju doesn't need to be so polite. We're just waiting here for a few days. Miss Feng Ju can go do whatever you need to do. There's no need to care about us. Thank you, 9th Imperial Concubine, for your understanding. After Feng Ju spoke with Jing Yu and Xiao Chen for a while, she turned and left. Jing Yu watched Feng Ju leave and slowly let out a sigh of relief. She said, I really didn't think that the girl from before would become like this. Isn't it all because of you? When Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu's words, he slightly tilted his head and looked at Feng Ju's figure walking down the attic. He seemed to be very amused as he lightly said, Go away. What are you talking about? Jing Yu stared at Xiao Chen with a faint smile in her eyes. Xiao Chen's eyes were also filled with a smile. Feng Ju stood at the bottom of the loft. When he looked up, he saw the two figures standing on top of the loft. They were so intimate that Feng Ju could not help but reveal a look of envy in his eyes. She slowly lowered her head as the corners of her lips curled into a faint smile. She turned around and walked towards the inner courtyard. As she walked, she was still thinking about the scene she had just witnessed. When would she be able to obtain such love? Feng Ju was probably lost in his thoughts. When he turned the corner, he didn't see anyone and accidentally bumped into them. Aya! Feng Ju was knocked back, but a pair of big hands caught his arm in time. Feng Ju's eyes widened slightly as he looked at the man in front of him. Miss Feng Ju, are you all right? The person in front of Feng Ju was wearing a blue robe. His baby face had a worried expression as he looked at Feng Ju and asked, I'm fine. When Feng Ju saw the person in front of her, she shook her head in embarrassment and said, I was careless and bumped into sect leader Feng. Please forgive me. Miss Feng Ju, you don't have to be so polite. Just call me Feng Ling. Feng Ling looked at Feng Ju and slowly let go of his hand. He slightly nodded and smiled at Feng Ju. Feng Ju was a bit embarrassed and smiled. Where is Miss Feng Ju going? Feng Ling slightly raised his eyebrows as he looked at Feng Ju and asked. Oh. Feng Ju smiled and said, I want to go to the streets to buy some things. Good, I also want to go to the streets and see what Yangzhou City looks like. I don't know if Miss Feng Ju is willing to bring me along? Feng Ling indifferently raised his eyebrows and asked. If young Master Feng doesn't mind, then let's go together. Feng Ju smiled and replied indifferently. Jing Yu had already seen the scenery of Yangzhou City. At this moment, Jing Yu had nothing to do, so she asked Xiao Chen to bring her to the roof. Standing on the highest roof of Yangzhou City, she looked at the scenery of Yangzhou City in a daze. Chapter 1472. Xiao Chen, so Yangzhou City looks like this. Jing Yu sat on the edge of the roof and looked at the sky, the ground, and the people around her. Do you like it? Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu with a gentle look in his eyes. Jing Yu nodded and said, If there is a chance, we must come and live in Yangzhou City for a while. Xiao Chen nodded and agreed. In the future. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes. They had talked too much about the future. Jing Yu was lost in thought as she looked at the scenery in the distance. Just as Jing Yu was lost in thought, she suddenly felt something cold dripping on her face. Jing Yu was slightly startled and looked up. The sky darkened little by little. Drops of rain fell and landed on the back of Jing Yu's hand and face. It's raining. Jing Yu looked up at the sky and the corners of her mouth curled up. Yes, it's raining. Xiao Chen followed Jing Yu's gaze and looked up. The two people sitting on the roof didn't try to hide from the rain. They just looked up and let the rain wash their faces and bodies. They felt the feeling of the rain falling on their faces, hands, and bodies. It was so clear and moving. This rain came in such a timely manner, yet so suddenly. Are you okay? Feng Ling looked at Feng Ju, who was wiping the rain off his face, and asked with a frown. I'm fine. Feng Ju shook his head and said, Yangzhou City is like this. There are no signs of rain at all, it's fine. Let's wait here for the rain to stop before leaving. Feng Ling and Feng Ju stood under the eaves and looked at the fine raindrops. Feng Ling smiled and said, Do you feel cold? I don't. Feng Ju was a little embarrassed as he shook his head. When he looked up at the rain, he saw a slender figure appear in the rain, holding an oil paper umbrella and walking steadily into Feng Ju's line of sight. Miss Feng Ju? Jing Lang, who was dressed in black robes, turned his head as if he was looking for someone. He did not expect to see Feng Ju and Feng Ling the moment he turned his head. He immediately raised his eyebrows in surprise. Young Master Jing? Feng Ju didn't expect to see Jing Lang and called out in surprise. Didn't Qing Gu say that he was on the streets? You asked me to pick up Qing Gu, but I didn't think that after circling around a few streets, I still couldn't find him. I think he must have gone back. Jing Lang looked at Feng Ju and slowly explained. I see. Feng Ju nodded slightly. Miss Feng Ju, your clothes are all wet. Why don't I send you back first? Don't catch a cold. Jing Lang looked at Feng Ju and said indifferently. After he finished speaking, he turned his head to look at Feng Ling and said, Sect Leader Feng, can you wait here for a moment? When I return, I will send someone to deliver an umbrella. Of course. Feng Ling looked at Jing Lang's indifferent expression. He knew that Jing Lang was telling the truth, but he had an inexplicable feeling of incomparable discomfort. However, in the situation before him, it seemed that other than saying yes, he couldn't say anything else. If that's the case, I will go with Miss Feng Ju first. Jing Lang nodded slightly at Feng Ling. Feng Ju also smiled at Feng Ling and followed Jing Lang. In the rain, the figures strolled slowly. In order to not let Feng Ju get wet, Jing Lang's umbrella was slightly tilted. When Feng Ju saw this scene, her heart jumped slightly and her face turned red. Stepping in the rain, she felt a little nervous. Chapter 1473. Miss Feng Ju, do you feel uncomfortable after sobering up? After a long silence, Jing Lang lowered his head and asked Feng Ju. Thank you for your concern, young Master Jing. I am fine. Feng Ju lowered her head in embarrassment and said, I heard that it was young Master Jing who sent me back to my room last night. Feng Ju would like to thank young Master Jing. You are welcome. Jing Lang pursed his lips and said, In the future, don't get drunk in front of others. If someone takes advantage of you, no one can save you. As they stood in front of the mansion gate, Feng Ju stopped in his tracks and looked up at Jing Lang when he heard his words. Young Master Jing? Feng Ju looked at Jing Lang's handsome face and her cheeks unconsciously turned red. Go in. Jing Lang didn't say much, but the calmness and gentleness between his eyebrows made Feng Ju's heart feel warm. Standing in front of the door, Feng Ju looked at the oil paper umbrella in front of the house, then looked at the figure running in the rain. He didn't know why, but as he looked at it, a faint smile appeared in his eyes. After taking a bath, he saw the bowl of hot ginger soup on the table. This is... Feng Ju looked at the ginger soup in front of her and her eyes were filled with confusion. Young Miss, this was sent by young Master Jing Lang. He said that young Miss was drenched in the rain today and should drink some ginger soup to get rid of the cold. The maid serving Feng Ju hurriedly said after hearing Feng Ju's question. Young Master Jing. Feng Ju sat at the table and looked at the steaming hot ginger soup. The corners of his mouth curled up as if he had thought of something. The hot ginger soup flowed down his throat and warmed Feng Ju's heart. At this moment, in Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's room, the same scene was happening in front of them. So comfortable. Jing Yu placed the empty bowl in her hand on the table. There was still some ginger soup at the bottom of the bowl. She pursed her lips and said, Big brother is the best. He sent the ginger soup. We just brought it along. After Xiao Chen finished the soup in one gulp, The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he said, I heard that Big Brother didn't send the ginger soup to us first after making it. When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's words, she immediately jumped up in excitement. She looked at Xiao Chen in astonishment and asked, Isn't this the first place? Then where did you send it? Xiao Chen looked at Jingyu's curious expression and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he said, I heard that Miss Fengjue went out to buy something today. Unexpectedly, it suddenly rained. Big Brother sent her an umbrella from 1,000 miles away and brought her back. Once she was brought back, he boiled some ginger soup and sent it over. Hiss. Jingyu sucked in a breath of cold air when she heard this. She looked at Xiao Chen excitedly and said, Big Brother, since when have you been so concerned about someone else? Could it be that you have taken a fancy to Miss Fengjue? I don't know. Xiao Chen smiled slightly as he looked at Jingyu. No, I have to ask Big Brother. Jingyu was about to stand up when Xiao Chen stopped Jingyu. He frowned and said, You don't have to care about your big brother's matters. Just watch and you will know the answer in the future. Jingyu was stunned. But there is another problem. Xiao Chen hugged Jingyu and said, I heard that the person who went out with Miss Fengjue today was Feng Ling. Chapter 1474. Feng Ling. Jingyu jumped up when she heard Xiao Chen's words. Her eyes were filled with confusion as she said, Is this guy trying to steal my sister-in-law? I can't let Feng Ling ruin it. Xiao Chen's mouth twitched when he heard Jingyu's words. How did she ruin it? Jingyu actually called Feng Ling sister-in-law. She was so sure that Fengjue would marry Jing Lang? Jing Lang definitely liked Fengjue? Really? Xiao Chen shook his head helplessly and said, Whatever happens will depend on my brother's ability. You don't have to worry about it. How can that be? That's my brother's marriage, Jingyu said with a glare. Xiao Chen frowned. Why did he suddenly have a feeling of regret? Why did he say this to Jingyu? Ever since Xiao Chen said this, Jingyu's attitude towards Fengjue had a 360-degree change. Jingyu also clearly noticed Jing Lang's concern for Fengjue, even though it seemed very ordinary. But as Jing Lang's sister, Jingyu understood her brother very well. When did Jing Lang care so much about someone? Even to Jingyu's good sisters, Shangguan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu, he was very courteous. How could he care so much about Fengjue? It seemed that Jing Lang really had feelings for Fengjue. But thinking about it, it made sense. Jingyu climbed on the windowsill with a dazed expression on her face. So many years had passed and her brother had already passed the age of marriage. But because of her, she didn't notice this at all. It was really unforgivable. Jingyu had a sad expression on her face. She frowned slightly and looked outside. In the garden below the attic, Jingyu and Fengjue were talking as they walked forward. Seeing the two of them talking calmly, Jingyu's eyes revealed a faint smile. Xiao Bai's news really did come. And it came very quickly. It was just that the news had arrived first and the ship hadn't arrived yet. Miss Fengjue, how is the ship? Jingyu pursed her lips and asked. Fengjue opened her mouth and asked. It's all prepared according to the requirements. Fengjue nodded at Jingyu and said, The ship is now docked at Yangzhou. There are a total of 15 ships, enough to carry people and goods. Moreover, the ship's crew is familiar with the sea. That's great. Jingyu and Xiao Chen looked at each other and nodded slowly. Jingyu and Xiao Chen came to Yangzhou's dock and saw the 15 huge ships docked there. These ships were all modified battleships and were extremely powerful. Jingyu and Xiao Chen stepped onto the ships and inspected them. Good, I'm very satisfied. Jingyu looked at them once and walked down the ship. She looked at Fengjue and said gratefully, Thank you, Miss Fengjue, for your efforts. Don't mention it. Since I can do it, I will naturally do it. Fengjue smiled at Jingyu and said lightly, Big Brother, we have to thank Miss Fengjue. Jingyu looked up at Jing Lang and said, Of course. Jing Lang looked at Jingyu and had a faint smile in his eyes. He slowly nodded and replied. Originally, this was a very ordinary conversation, as if they were used to it. However, when Fengjue heard this conversation, she felt a very strange feeling. This feeling made her heart beat uncontrollably and her cheeks turned slightly red. Chapter 1475. Jingyu, who was by the side, took in Fengju's every move, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a faint smile. 2 days after Xiaobai's arrival, a large group of people arrived at Yangzhou's docks. Dozens of ships appeared in front of Jingyu and Xiao Chen's eyes, causing Jingyu and Xiao Chen's eyes to widen slightly. They watched the ships approach with their own eyes. Seeing the black figure standing at the bow of the ship in the middle, Jingyu and Xiao Chen's hearts trembled slightly. Jingyu's eyes widened slightly as a faint smile appeared on her face. The boat was getting closer and closer. Jingyu, Xiao Chen, and the others also saw the people on the boat getting closer and closer. Father, Mother. Xiaobai rushed down from the ship almost as soon as it docked. His face was full of excitement, and his handsome little face had a faint blush as he rushed over and stood in front of Xiao Chen and Jingyu. Mother. After Xiaobai called out to Jingyu, he raised his head and looked at Xiao Chen. He seemed to be a little nervous. Under Xiao Chen's gaze, his hands that were hanging by his sides slightly clenched. He looked up at Xiao Chen and called out, Father. Xiao Chen was silent for a while, and then responded with a faint nasal sound. The blush on Xiaobai's face deepened as if he had heard Xiao Chen's response, as if he had received a great reward. You did well. Xiao Chen was silent for a while, and then said again, You are worthy of being my son, Xiao Chen. After Xiaobai heard Xiao Chen's words, he immediately responded with a face full of excitement. The bright look in his eyes made Jingyu, who was standing to the side, look at the father and son like this, and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. Jingyu turned her head slightly to look at Xiao Chen, and then said to Xiaobai, Let your people rest for a day. We will set off tomorrow. Yes, mother. Xiaobai curved his eyebrows and smiled, and then let his people rest. Compared to the last time they met, Xiaobai's subordinates had more than doubled. Moreover, these people were originally the leaders of the pirates, but now they had become Xiaobai's subordinates. This made Jingyu and Xiao Chen very surprised, but looking at the way Xiaobai interacted with these people, Jingyu wasn't worried. What's more, with the 9th emperors and the empress of different pupils as parents, who would dare to act recklessly? Father. Xiaobai stood in front of Xiao Chen and looked at Xiao Chen nervously as he clenched his hands. You've grown taller. Xiao Chen stared at Xiaobai for a long time, and then slowly spat out these 3 words. Xiaobai pursed his lips and nodded and said, Your child has grown up. Xiao Chen slowly nodded and said, Strengthen your forces, and in the future, protect your mother with me. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xiaobai's eyes suddenly lit up and he nodded resolutely. On the Yangzhou dock, after resting for a day, Jingyu and Xiao Chen led everyone to board the ship. Looking at the scenery in the distance, the expression on their faces changed for a moment. The expression in their eyes was so calm, but also not calm. The scenery in Yangzhou City was the same as before. Jingyu and Xiao Chen stood on the dock, and beside the dock, Jing Lang and Fengju stood on the dock. Miss Fengju. Jing Lang looked at Fengju quietly and called out. After calling out, he seemed to hesitate, and his dark eyes quietly looked at Fengju and said, Ju, this is a battle of life and death. Chapter 1476. If I die in the Holy Family, then everything between us will disappear with the wind. Jing Lang calmly looked at Fengju and said, If I come back safely, Ju, will you marry me? Those words floated in the wind and clearly reached Fengju's ears. The man standing in the wind had a faint smile on his handsome face. His pitch-black eyes were looking at Fengju with a serious expression. He didn't make any promises, but he made a promise to wait. Fengju stood in the wind for a long time. The two of them quietly looked at each other. Feng Ling, who was standing in the distance, saw this scene with his own eyes. He helplessly shook his head and bitterly smiled as he turned around and stepped onto the ship. Okay. That day, the sun was very bright. That day, she was exceptionally beautiful. That day, he said, If I come back safely, will you marry me? She said yes. On the dock of Yangzhou City, the woman in white clothes was sitting on the dock. She was playing the zither to send him off. The man standing at the bow of the ship looked deeply at the white figure on the dock. For the first time, he was worried about someone other than his family. Big brother. Jing Yu walked over to Jing Lang's side. The dock of Yangzhou City was long gone. Jing Lang slowly retracted his gaze and turned his head to look at Jing Yu gently. Big brother, are you afraid? Jing Yu looked up at Jing Lang and asked. I'm not afraid. When Jing Lang heard Jing Yu's question, he knew what Jing Yu meant. He raised his hand and patted Jing Yu's head and said, Now, I want to win even more. I want to go back safely. Big brother, don't worry. You will definitely be safe. Jing Yu looked at Jing Lang and nodded her head firmly. Jing Lang looked at Jing Yu and slowly raised the corners of his mouth. Looking at the direction of the ship, he sighed deeply. He had to go back. There was someone waiting for him in Yangzhou City. Jing Yu's lips curled into a faint smile. Looking at Jing Lang's back, she didn't say anything. Looking at the disappearing house and the blue sky, Jing Yu's eyes were filled with a faint smile. Looking at the distant sun, she slightly narrowed her eyes. Swaying on the surface of the sea made Jing Yu feel a little uncomfortable. Blurg. In the cabin on the ship, Jing Yu vomited until she was dizzy, and her little face was pale. Are you okay? Xiao Chen furrowed his brows and looked at Jing Yu's pale face. His eyes were filled with anxiety as he said, I'll go get Qing Gu. Wait. Jing Yu hurriedly raised her hand to stop Xiao Chen and said, I was just disgusted by the swaying of the ship. I will be fine after eating some sour food. There is no need to call Qing Gu. I have to trouble Qing Gu for such a small matter. Really? Jing Yu said as she looked at Xiao Chen with dissatisfaction. When Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu's words, he frowned and looked at Jing Yu and said, Are you really okay? I am fine. Jing Yu nodded and asked Xiao Chen to eat some sour food. Xiao Chen went and took some sour plums and put them in his mouth. Jing Yu immediately felt a lot better and sighed deeply. It was really strange. In the past, when she was on the ship, she didn't get seasick. This time, it was actually so uncomfortable. During the days on the ship, Jing Yu almost always hugged the sour plums. If she didn't eat them for a long time, she would definitely feel extremely disgusted. Fortunately, after eating the sour plums, nothing else happened. Xiao Chen slowly sighed in relief. Chapter 1477. It would take some time to reach the Holy Family's island. The days of sailing on the sea were boring. What made Jing Yu and Xiao Chen extremely speechless was that Xiao Bai and Feng Yu were actually at odds with each other. This was what happened. It was said that when Xiao Bai sat on the deck to practice archery, he was ridiculed by the little lowly Feng Yu, and then Xiao Bai was so impolite that he shot the arrow in his hand at Feng Yu. It was said that Feng Yu was scared to tears on the spot. Then this little girl felt that she had lost face and hated Xiao Bai to the bone. On this ship, she almost used all her strength to prank Xiao Bai, but countless times, she was beaten back by Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai, you and I are irreconcilable. Feng Yu shouted this sentence. Jing Yu was tired of hearing it almost every day. Oh! What made Jing Yu not know whether to laugh or cry the most was that every time Feng Yu said such a sentence, Xiao Bai would calmly spit out such a word. It was simply enough to make people explode at any moment. It was obvious that Feng Yu had exploded. But poor Feng Yu couldn't beat Xiao Bai and was bullied like this. Xiao Chen, why do I feel that Xiao Bai's temperament is so similar to yours? Every time Jing Yu saw this scene, she was very entangled and frowned. Xiao Bai was simply like a miniature version of Xiao Chen. This temper is simply too bad. My son is naturally like me. Every time Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu say such words, he nodded lightly. That calm appearance made Jing Yu gnash her teeth. It was equivalent to showing off his face. Jing Yu nestled in Xiao Chen's arms and slightly raised the corners of her mouth. As time passed, the island where the Holy Family was located was finally getting closer. Holy Family, I, Jing Yu, am back. Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the others stood at the bow of the ship and looked at the scenery in the distance. There was a faint smile in their eyes, but their golden-green eyes were cold. The Holy Family, Qin Bai. Are you ready to welcome them? His golden-green eyes flickered with a cold, killing intent. It was so cold and merciless. Jing Yu stood at the bow of the ship and watched the approaching island. Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the others stood motionlessly at the bow of the ship as they watched the Holy Family's island get closer and closer. They also saw the Holy Family's believers appear at the pier. They were the people of the sacred race. When they saw so many ships bearing down on them, Jing Yu saw the fear in their eyes with her own eyes. "Who are you? How dare you offend the Holy Family?" The leader looked at the approaching ships and quickly waved his hand to signal the archers behind him to draw their bows and prepare for battle. "Don't you know very well who we are?" Jing Yu slowly took a step forward. Her clear voice reverberated on the surface of the sea. She was dressed in black, and her golden-green eyes were dazzling under the scorching sun. Strange, strange pupils. The moment Jing Yu stepped forward, everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment. "Haha." Jing Yu laughed loudly and said, "Holy Family." Jing Yu said that day, "When I return to the Holy Family, it will be the end of your Holy Family. It's time for your Holy Family to settle the debts that you owe me." Jing Yu's words were like a curse that spread far and wide. Revenge for my father's death. The pain of losing a son. The deception. The meticulous planning of your Holy Family. You almost separated Xiao Chen and I. Your careful planning almost caused us to miss each other. You even put me on the altar and wanted to kill me as a sacrifice to heaven. Chapter 1478. What evil things have I, Jing Yu, done? What unforgivable crimes have I, Jing Yu, done to your Holy Family? Jing Yu's hands, which were hanging by her side, clenched tightly. Her golden-green eyes seemed to be dyed with thick flames of anger. Why can your Holy Family control my life and death? Why? Everything your Holy Family does is right. Today I will tell you. Everything the Holy Family has done to me, I will use the lives of all your Holy Family members to pay for it. Didn't you say that people with different pupils are evil? Didn't you say that I am a monster? Today, I will let you open your eyes and see clearly. What is a real monster? What is a great evil person? Above the sea, Jing Yu's voice resounded through the sky. Layers of strange waves surged on the surface of the sea. The members of the Holy Family who were standing at the dock were shocked when they saw the sudden change in the scene. When they saw what was revealed on the surface of the sea, all of them widened their eyes. It's a vicious shark. Among them, some people with sharp eyes saw the appearance of the vicious sharks, which surrounded the entire Saint Race's island. It was so hair-raising. People of the Holy Family, don't leave a single one alive. Jing Yu's golden-green eyes were incomparably cold as she gave the cruel order to kill. At this moment, it was destined that the Holy Family would shed a river of blood. The people on the ship went to the ground, and the dense rain of arrows flew toward the people of the Holy Family. Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the others wielded long swords and killed a bloody path. At this moment, the sky seemed to be full of dense clouds. It was really as Jing Yu said. Leave no one alive. The stone stairs were littered with corpses. Jing Yu walked up the stairs and stood in front of the palace of the Holy Family's high priest. The long sword in her hand was frighteningly cold, and her golden-green eyes were filled with murderous intent. The gate of the Holy Family's high priest palace collapsed. Just like that, Jing Yu stepped into the palace. Yun Weijun. Jing Yu looked up slightly and saw the woman sitting on the main seat. She was dressed in black and white clothes with beautiful golden totems embroidered on them. She sat there quietly and watched as Jing Yu and Xiao Chen arrived. Jing Yu, you're here. Yun Weijun saw Jing Yu and clenched her hands a little. She saw with her own eyes that outside the gate, all the people of the Holy Family were killed on the ground. Jing Yu looked at Yun Weijun and slowly raised the corner of her mouth. You're finally here? Yun Weijun's body seemed to tremble. She stood up and slowly walked down from the high seat. She stood in front of Jing Yu and looked at Jing Yu's golden-green eyes that were filled with murderous intent. Her heart trembled fiercely. Why are you still alive? It's clear that the celestial phenomenon has been set. The woman with the different pupils has died. The Holy Family has passed the most difficult time. Yun Wei-jun stared at Jingyu and said, Why are you still alive? Why did the Holy Family suffer such a disaster? Ha! Jingyu heard Yun Wei-jun's words and suddenly laughed out loud as if she had heard something very funny. She slowly restrained the smile on her face and said, Yun Wei-jun, do you know that it's all because of you? Chapter 1479. In the beginning, I had no intention of slaughtering the Holy Family. I listened to your words and wanted Yen Chen to die with my father. I didn't expect that the people of the Holy Family were all liars. Jingyu stared at Yun Wei-jun and said, Today's situation was created by your own hands. Now, are you happy to see me alive? Jingyu looked at Yun Wei-jun with eyes full of mockery. Jingyu! Yun Wei-jun heard Jingyu's words and suddenly felt a lump in her throat. She suddenly knelt down in front of everyone and said, Jingyu, it's all my fault. I beg you, please let go of those people. Yun Wei-jun's eyes were full of pleading. She looked at Jingyu and said, Jingyu, you have different pupils. These people of the Holy Family are your people. Yun Wei-jun, don't you think you're ridiculous now? Jingyu heard Yun Wei-jun's words and laughed instead of being angry. She looked at Yun Wei-jun and sneered, When you sent me to the altar to kill me, why didn't you say I was a member of the Holy Family? Yun Wei-jun, I want you to see the Holy Family destroyed by this ship with your own eyes. Jingyu's eyes were full of coldness. Did you catch them? Jingyu turned to look at Xing Yi and Xing Er behind her and asked, Madam, we've brought him to the altar. Interrogation Officer 1 took a step forward and bowed as he spoke. Very good, let's go. Jingyu coldly curled her lips and walked up to the altar step by step. When she walked up to the altar, she was escorted up and was going to die. But now, the positions of the two sides were swapped. Jingyu and Shaochen sat on the altar and watched with their own eyes. Countless people were tied up on the altar and their eyes were full of fear. The scene in front of them was so ridiculous. When Jingyu was sent to the altar, these people's faces and words were still fresh in her memory. They were shouting to kill the evildoers, shouting to kill the evildoers. Those people looked at her with disgust, as if they couldn't wait to kill her. But now, these people were like the most lowly people looking at him with fear. The expression in their eyes was so laughable. Jingyu sat quietly on the altar and watched people being pushed up one by one. Those people's words were so clear and their pleading and fear made Jingyu laugh disdainfully. Jingyu, if you want to kill me, why do you have to hurt these innocent people? The high and mighty Qin Bai was escorted to the altar under Jingyu's gaze. His messy hair and his shouts made Jingyu turn her eyes slowly. Qin Bai, what right do you think you have to say this to me? Jingyu watched with her own eyes as Qin Bai was kicked to his knees by the guards. Her eyes were cold. Do you think these people are innocent? Don't you want them to die? Jingyu sat on the altar indifferently. She looked at those people and slowly curled the corners of her mouth. She sighed and said, Back then, I also had good intentions. Unfortunately, you destroyed them with your own hands. Jingyu's eyes were full of viciousness. You keep calling me evildoer and evildoer. You people from the Holy Family are the real evildoers. Jingyu seemed to be agitated. When Qin Bai heard Jingyu's words, his face turned pale. Chapter 1480. Your Holy Family has been pushing for the distinction between good and evil. Now, this is the price your Holy Family has to pay. Jingyu suddenly stood up. In front of everyone, her black robe made her look like a demon that had crawled out of hell. Take everyone, all of them, Jingyu said slowly. Her words were so cold, but before she could finish, she heard a cry of alarm. Sister, you... The voice sounded so familiar. Zuan, who was tied up by the guards, stood on the altar. He saw Jingyu and heard Jingyu's words. His eyes were full of astonishment and he quickly exclaimed. Jingyu turned to look at Zua and Jingyu replayed the scene in her mind. When Jingyu was tied up on the altar, Zuan was the only one who stood up for her. But, so what? Jingyu smiled disdainfully. She turned her head and looked at all the people kneeling on the altar. She spat out a word coldly, "Kill." The sky looked like it was covered with dark clouds. When the hand-air knife came down, red blood dyed the altar red. Qinbai screamed, "Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!" On the altar, Yun Weijun almost fainted. She saw with her own eyes the people of the Holy Family being slaughtered. Regardless of whether they were weak women or men, they were all killed at this moment. The bright red blood spread on the altar. It flowed along the altar and into the soil. Jingyu. Yun Weijun watched this scene with his own eyes, watching those who were originally alive die in the hands of Jingyu at this moment. You will suffer retribution. I, Yun Weijun, in the name of the head of the Holy Family, curse you, Jingyu. You will die miserably for all eternity. The bitter curse reached Jingyu's ears. Yun Weijun's voice was hoarse, probably because she was too sad and angry. Ha! Jingyu heard Yun Weijun's curse and smiled disdainfully as if she had heard something very interesting. She said, "Yun Weijun, have you forgotten? Your so-called Holy Lord position was originally mine." Jingyu looked at Yun Weijun quietly with her dark eyes and said, "You took my position and now you are cursing me in the name of the Holy Lord? Ha! This is ridiculous." Yun Weijun's expression changed when she heard Jingyu's words. Her eyes were full of shock, and Jingyu laughed even louder. Why did you do this?" Qinbai's eyes were bloodshot and he looked at Jingyu with grief and anger. Jingyu looked at Qinbai and her expression didn't change. "Back then, when you decided to kill me, you should have expected this day to come. Shouldn't you have thought about it?" Jingyu looked at Qinbai with a faint smile in her eyes. Her golden-green eyes were full of killing intent as she walked towards Qinbai step by step. "From the beginning of your deceit to the later step by step, you tried to kill me again and again. Qinbai, didn't you prepare yourself for today?" Jingyu walked up to the altar and looked at the people kneeling on the altar. Chapter 1481. They were the high priests of the Holy Family, the elders of the Holy Family, and the rest were just these people. Jingyu's eyes were filled with mockery. Qinbai was so angry that his whole body was trembling as he watched Jingyu approach. He looked at Jingyu as if he wanted to skin Jingyu alive. "You monster! I should have killed you back then." When Jingyu stood in front of Qinbai, a panicked and hateful voice came from behind Qinbai and roared at Jingyu. "Haha!" Jingyu turned to look. The person kneeling on the ground was the third elder, He. His voice was trembling as he looked at Jingyu with a gaze filled with deep resentment and incomparable fear. "Is that so?" Jingyu smiled at Jie and said, "Since you want to kill me so badly, I'll give you the chance to kill me now." Jingyu said as she waved at the guards beside her to untie Jie. Then, she looked at Jie quietly and said, "You can come and kill me now. No one will stop you. Come and kill me." Jingyu's words made everyone's expression change. They didn't know what Jingyu meant by doing this. Jie slowly stood up and looked around. The guards were really standing there without any movement. Jingyu didn't have any weapons in her hands. She just stood in front of Jie and looked at him with a smile. That pair of smiling eyes made Jie's heart beat faster. Jingyu didn't have any weapons in her hands. If he could kill Jingyu, he would. Thinking of this, Jie's dark eyes suddenly flashed with a strong murderous intent. The way he looked at Jingyu became more and more ferocious. Jingyu didn't move at all. She just looked at Jie quietly. "I'll kill you." Jie looked at Jingyu. Under everyone's gaze, Jie suddenly rushed towards Jingyu. His ferocious expression made everyone's pupils shrink slightly. Xiao Chen's hand that was holding the chair suddenly tightened. However, under everyone's shocked gaze, the original shock turned into a dead silence. It was at this moment that the situation changed. The scene on the altar was different from what everyone had imagined. Qinbai shouted almost as soon as Jie rushed out, but it was still too late. That was the sound of the long sword piercing into Jie's body. That cold long sword easily penetrated Jie's body. Jingyu's expression didn't change at all when Jie rushed over. Jingyu suddenly turned around and avoided Jie's attack. At the same time, she pulled out the long sword from the waist of the soldier beside her. Almost without any hesitation, she directly pierced Jie Yi's body. Hee hee. Jie Yi's expression stiffened and his eyes widened little by little. Jing Yu slowly released her hand and took a step back. Looking at Jie Yi's expression, the corner of her mouth curved into a faint smile and said, "I forgot to tell you. You want to kill me and I want to kill you very much." Bang. Jie Yi's body suddenly fell in front of Qin Bai. Qin Bai's face was full of shock. Looking at Jie Yi on the ground, his heart couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 1482. The surroundings fell into a dead silence. When everyone looked at Jing Yu, their expressions became extremely ugly. Their hearts couldn't help but tremble. They swallowed hard and watched as Jing Yu continued to move forward. "What are you doing?" Yan Chen saw Jing Yu approaching step by step, and his eyes were suddenly filled with shock. He looked at Jing Yu with trembling eyes. Because Yan Chen's feet couldn't run, when he saw Jing Yu approaching, Yan Chen could only move his body back bit by bit. "What am I doing?" Jing Yu stood in front of Yan Chen. She lowered her head and looked at Yan Chen. Her golden-green eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Back then, I told you to live a good life in the sacred race," Jing Yu said as she slowly circled behind Yan Chen. She continued to speak faintly. "Yan Chen, do you think that I have forgotten about the hatred of killing my father? I said that one day, I will personally kill my way into the Holy Family and chop off your head to avenge my father." Jing Yu slowly stood in front of Yan Chen and looked down at him. Her petite body blocked the light and her shadow shrouded Yan Chen. "Yan Chen, are you ready to pay for your life?" As soon as Jing Yu finished speaking, Yan Chen suddenly raised his head and looked at Jing Yu. All he saw was the big knife that was raised under the light. The big knife was glowing with a cold light. Yan Chen opened his mouth to speak, but his words stopped abruptly. Jing Yu neatly raised the knife and chopped off Yan Chen's head. Bright red blood splattered and splashed onto Jing Yu's cheeks. Clang. Jing Yu casually threw the knife in her hand onto the altar. This clear sound woke up everyone who had fallen into a daze. They looked at Jing Yu with eyes full of fear. "Father, your daughter has finally avenged you." Jing Yu stepped to the edge of the altar and slowly took out a small jade bottle. When Jing Yu cremated Jing Zhan's body, she used this porcelain bottle to store a small jar of ashes. For so long, Jing Yu had always carried this porcelain bottle with her. Jing Yu slowly lowered her head and opened the porcelain bottle in her hand. She looked up at the sky and slowly poured the ashes in the porcelain bottle onto the Holy Family. A breeze blew and Jing Yu's eyes filled with heat. "Father, your daughter has avenged you. I've personally chopped off the head of the person who harmed you to avenge you." Jing Yu said softly, "Your daughter is unfilial. Today, I've finally avenged you. When I go back, I'll set up a monument and engrave a name for you. I hope Father can rest in peace in the underworld. If there's a next life, you still wants to be Father's daughter." A drop of hot tears flowed out of Jing Yu's eyes. Her mind was filled with memories of Jing Zhan. From the hatred she felt when she found out that Jing Zhan was her father, to the heartache she felt when she found out what Jing Zhan did for her, to how he carefully persuaded her to return to her family. He was her father. He was the only father she had in her 2 lifetimes. How cruel the heavens were. Before she could enjoy her father's love and be filial to him, her father left her just like that. Chapter 1483. Tears welled up in Jing Yu's eyes, drop by drop. She was so sad. "Father!" Jing Yu's soft voice seemed to penetrate everything. "You." That kind smile and the way he looked at Jing Yu made Jing Yu's lips tremble slightly. She still remembered the first time her father touched her. His hand was full of calluses and he was so careful. The warmth from his palm was something Jing Yu had never felt before. That was her father's warmth. But now, there was nothing left. All of this was because of the Holy Family. It was because of the Holy Family. Jing Yu suddenly turned her head and looked at everyone from the Holy Family with reddened eyes. Her eyes were filled with an intense murderous intent. Kill them all. Jing Yu suddenly raised her hand and pointed at the elders. Her golden-green eyes were filled with an intense murderous intent. At this moment, Xiaochen suddenly shouted. He flew up to the altar and stood in front of Jing Yu. Ew. Xiaochen looked at Jing Yu and frowned slightly. He looked at Jing Yu worriedly. Xiaochen. Jing Yu looked at Xiaochen standing in front of her. Tears welled up in her eyes again. She looked at Xiaochen as if she had been greatly wronged. Her lips trembled slightly as she said, I miss father so much. Ew. Xiaochen heard Jing Yu's words and his heart ached. He reached out and hugged Jing Yu. Father's revenge has been avenged. If father knew in the underworld, he wouldn't want to see you like this. Have you forgotten? Back then, your father said that he wanted you to be happy forever. Xiaochen hugged Jing Yu tightly as his gentle words entered Jing Yu's ears. Jing Yu was in a daze for a moment. She suddenly remembered everything that had happened in the Jing residence. Yes, father said that he liked to see me smile. Jing Yu buried her head in Xiaochen's arms. Her tears soaked Xiaochen's clothes. That day was a disaster for the Holy Family. No matter how much time had passed, whether it was the Holy Family members who survived or the Jianghu members who participated in this massacre, they would remember this day forever. They would remember everyone who had orchestrated this massacre. Qin Bai, the Holy Family was destroyed because of your Holy Family. Xiaochen's voice rang out on the huge altar. The black-clothed man stood with his hands behind his back. His pitch-black eyes were filled with coldness. He looked at the people kneeling in the field as if he was looking at ants. There was no emotion or warmth in his eyes. If your Holy Family didn't disregard everything and kill you, Er's father first, how could the Holy Family be forced to such a state? One wrong step led to many wrong steps. Xiaochen looked quietly at Qin Bai and said, Do you understand this logic? Qin Bai raised his head slightly and looked at Xiaochen. He slowly stood up and looked at the Holy Family in front of him. The corpses and fresh blood constantly stimulated Qin Bai's nerves. Are you satisfied with the current situation? Xiaochen looked at Qin Bai again and said, The Holy Family is not invincible. In this king's eyes, your Holy Family is not even comparable to a small country. Do you think you are invincible just because you have the ability to peek into heaven's secrets? Xiaochen's words were like a curse that drilled into Qin Bai's ears. They were so clear that he could hear them clearly. You are far away from the secular world, but you call yourself a master. Chapter 1484. Qin Bai's eyes widened. You think you're better than everyone else, but you don't know that your Holy Family will be destroyed because of your arrogance. There's always someone better than you. Xiaochen turned to look at Qin Bai indifferently and said slowly, If this king wanted to, he could have easily destroyed your Holy Family when the Tokyo was at its peak. Qin Bai, do you understand? Do you understand that? It went straight into Qin Bai's heart. At this moment, it stirred Qin Bai's heart. It was so frightening. It turned out that he was wrong. He had been wrong all along. Qin Bai looked at Xiaochen, looked around, and looked at Jing Yu. He slowly laughed. His laughter was filled with sadness. He had calculated everything, but he had forgotten to calculate people's hearts and himself. Ha! Holy Family! Holy Family! Ha! Qin Bai laughed loudly. He looked at the corpses in front of him and laughed bitterly. Under the gaze of Jing Yu and Xiaochen, Qin Bai's face turned abnormally red. Then, under everyone's gaze, Qin Bai suddenly vomited. His originally red face turned pale in an instant. Good kill? Good kill. Qin Bai raised his hand and wiped the blood from his lips. He looked at the blood on the altar and laughed even louder. Not enough, not enough. It's better to kill them all. Jing Yu and Xiaochen looked at Qin Bai. When they heard Qin Bai's words, their expressions changed. Before they could do anything, they saw Qin Bai suddenly stand up. He pulled out a sword from a soldier's hand and slashed it at the elders behind him. High Priest! When the elders saw the long sword slashing towards them, they hurriedly retreated backwards as they cried out in alarm. Their eyes were filled with fear. They probably didn't expect to escape death from Jing Yu, but they didn't expect to be killed by their own high priest in the blink of an eye. Qin Bai killed 2 people in a row without hesitation. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen came back to their senses. "Stop him!" Xiao Chen's expression changed and he quickly shouted. "Get lost! Get out of my way!" Qin Bai was almost crazy. Jing Yu looked at Qin Bai and her eyes flashed with anger. She strode towards Qin Bai and kicked Qin Bai in the stomach, sending Qin Bai to the ground. "Qin Bai! Put away your disgusting thoughts." Jing Yu stared at Qin Bai with her golden green eyes and said, "If you dare to move, I will kill everyone from the Holy Family here." "Qin Bai, do you think I don't dare?" Jing Yu said with a murderous look on her face. She looked at Qin Bai and said, "I have killed enough people. Do you think I care about killing one or two more?" As soon as Jing Yu finished speaking, Qin Bai's body suddenly stopped moving. He fell to the ground and looked up at Jing Yu. Jing Yu couldn't understand the look in his eyes. The Holy Family was in chaos. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen's names spread all over the world. Qin Bai and the others were all imprisoned. Jing Yu's eyes were calm as she watched the Holy Family being taken away one by one. Chapter 1485. However, there was one person who stopped in front of Jing Yu as he was being taken away. This person was Zhuan stood in front of Jing Yu. His slightly childish face appeared in front of Jing Yu. His pair of pitch-black eyes stared quietly at Jing Yu. There was a strong sense of resentment in his eyes. "I hate you." Zhuan stared at Jing Yu for a long time. His cold words made Jing Yu's expression change instantly. Her dark eyes were filled with coldness as she watched Zhuan being taken away. "Jing Yu, I hate you. I will never forgive you." These cold words drilled into Jing Yu's ears over and over again. Jing Yu stood rooted to the ground. She clenched her fists and slowly lowered her head without saying a word. The Holy Family was destroyed. When Jing Yu, Xiao Chen, and the rest left, the fire directly ignited the entire Holy Family island. The intense fire dyed the sky red. Jing Yu quietly watched the fire that burned for a day and a night on the beach of the Holy Family. Her golden green eyes narrowed slightly. "Madam, what should we do with those people from the Holy Family?" Xing Yi stood beside Jing Yu. He bowed slightly and asked, "Abolish all the martial arts practitioners and banish them to the sea. Whether they live or die has nothing to do with me." "Yes, madam," Xing Yi replied respectfully when he heard Jing Yu's words. His body trembled slightly. This was probably the most benevolent decision Jing Yu could make. The powerful Holy Family in people's hearts was destroyed so easily and so suddenly. Jing Yu looked at the fire that soared into the sky. Her eyes were a little absent-minded. What she had been holding on to finally came to an end today. She had avenged her father. However, Jing Yu did not feel happy at all. She only felt pain in her heart. As Jing Yu had said, Xing Yi dragged all the people from the Holy Family onto the ship. Jing Yu looked at the people who were brought onto the ship one by one. Qin Bai was among them. Jing Yu was very familiar with his face, but they were not the same person. Yun Weijun followed behind Qin Bai and walked forward step by step. His head was lowered and there was no expression on his face. Jing Yu stood not far away and watched this scene quietly. She looked at these people who almost instantly decided her life and death. Now, she didn't even know whether she was alive or not. The corners of Jing Yu's mouth curled into a faint sneer. She turned her head slightly and seemed to want to talk to Xiao Chen, who was standing on the side. But when Jing Yu turned her head, Yun Weijun, who had been walking forward quietly, suddenly ran in Jing Yu's direction like a madman. Xiao Chen stood aside. When he saw this scene, he almost didn't think and rushed towards Jing Yu. His eyes were full of fear. Chi! A pitch-black arrow with a strong murderous intent directly stabbed into Yun Weijun's heart. Jing Yu? Yun Weijun knelt down in front of Jing Yu. His eyes were full of pleading. He stared at Jing Yu and said, "Please, please let Qin Bai go. I will die for him, I beg you." Jing Yu didn't expect that Yun Weijun would rush to her in order to say such a sentence to her. He directly used his life to plead for Qin Bai. Jing Yu's eyes widened slightly as she watched Yun Weijun fall in front of her. Chapter 1486. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness as she stared at Jingyu. Until her death, Jingyu didn't say a single word. She just watched as Yun Weijun fell down, dying with her eyes wide open. Xiaochen rushed to Jingyu's side and looked at Jingyu in panic, asking, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Jingyu shook her head slightly at Xiaochen. "Mother." Xiaobai also rushed over at this moment. Seeing that Jingyu wasn't injured, he slowly let out a sigh of relief. Jingyu turned to look at Xiaobai and saw the bow in Xiaobai's hand. She naturally knew that the person who shot the arrow was Xiaobai. "What are you guys doing? You can't even look after a woman." Before Xiaochen could open his mouth to scold them, Xiaobai suddenly opened his mouth and scolded them. His small face was filled with coldness, just like Xiaochen. "Xiaobai, mother is fine." Jingyu looked at Xiaobai's appearance and said softly, "Get lost." After hearing Jingyu's words, Xiaobai coldly shouted at the person kneeling on the ground. When he turned to look at Jingyu, he was like a completely different person from the person who was scolding her just now. The pure smile on his face made the corners of the guards at the side twitch. He was really good at acting. Jingyu smiled. Just as she turned her head and was about to speak, she suddenly felt dizzy and her body involuntarily fell backwards. Xiaochen quickly grabbed Jingyu's waist and a look of panic appeared on his face. He quickly called out, "What's wrong?" "Qinggu! Qinggu!" Xiaochen's panicked voice sounded on the beach. Jingyu frowned slightly and rubbed her head, saying, "It's okay, maybe she's tired. No, let Qinggu take a look." Xiaochen looked at Jingyu's pale face. No matter what Jingyu said, he still wouldn't listen to Qinggu. Qinggu rushed over as fast as he could. Jingyu was Xiaochen's treasure. If anything happened to her, wouldn't Xiaochen skin him alive? In the room on the ship, Jingyu was forced to lie on the bed by Xiaochen. Her face was slightly pale, but it didn't look like anything serious. Qinggu stepped into the room. When he saw that Jingyu was awake, he slowly let out a sigh of relief. It didn't look like it was anything serious. "Ninth sister-in-law, this is?" Qinggu walked over and asked. "It's nothing, I just felt a little dizzy." Jingyu smiled apologetically at Qinggu and said, "I said I was fine, but Xiaochen insisted on calling you over." "Pa, it's okay, it's okay." Qinggu smiled and said, "Ninth brother is just worried about you. It's what he should do. Sorry to trouble you." Jingyu smiled at Qinggu and slowly extended her wrist. Qinggu raised his hand to take her pulse. Xiaochen and Qinggu were standing on the side. They weren't particularly worried, but when Qinggu put his hand on her wrist, he immediately frowned. As time passed, Qingji's frown deepened. On the side, Xiaochen and Xiaobai looked at Qingji's serious expression and suddenly became nervous. They didn't dare to say a word. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Looking at Qingji's expression, they knew that something must have happened, and it must be something big. Xiaochen and Qinggu had known each other for many years, so he knew Qinggu very well. Chapter 1487. How could she not know why Qinggu had such an expression? It's really too strange. Qinggu finally retracted his hand slowly. After holding it in for a long time, he didn't seem to know what to say. "What's wrong?" When Jingyu heard Qingji's words, her expression became a little nervous. She frowned slightly and asked, "Is there something wrong with my body?" "There is. Something big," Qinggu said solemnly when he heard Jingyu's words. "What's going on? What's wrong with you?" Xiaochen hurriedly stepped forward and asked nervously. "Ninth sister-in-law she?" Qinggu hesitated for a moment before saying slowly, "Ninth sister-in-law is pregnant." Qingji's words slowly rang out in the room. Shangguan Linglan, who had heard the commotion outside, walked to the door and heard this sentence. He immediately froze on the spot, his face full of shock. "What did you say?" Xiaochen had already prepared himself for the worst, but he didn't expect Qinggu to say such words. Instantly, Xiaochen's brain went blank and he couldn't come back to his senses. "I said, ninth sister-in-law is pregnant, and she's been pregnant for almost 2 months." Qinggu repeated himself. "Pregnant?" Xiaochen was stunned for a full 30 seconds before he turned to look at Jingyu. Jingyu was also sitting on the bed with a look of shock. It seemed like she hadn't recovered for a long time. Pregnant, so she was pregnant. Had a child again. Qinggu looked at Xiao Chen and Jingyu with a frown and said, "Ninth sister-in-law's pulse is a little strange. What's wrong? What's wrong with the child? What's wrong with you?" Xiao Chen's heart trembled when he heard Qingji's words. He looked at Qinggu with some fear. The nervousness in his eyes made Qinggu not know whether to laugh or cry. "Ninth sister-in-law and the children are fine," Qinggu said helplessly. "It's okay. It's good that you're okay." Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. He seemed a little excited, but he had to suppress his emotions. He carefully walked to the bedside and looked into Jingyu's eyes. His fingers trembled slightly. "Brother Jiao, I haven't finished yet." Qinggu felt a burst of righteousness when he saw Xiao Chen's expression. "Speak." Xiao Chen took a deep breath and turned to look at Qinggu. "I just checked ninth sister-in-law's pulse. It's really strange." Qinggu slowly frowned and said, "Logically speaking, this should be ninth sister-in-law's second child, but this pulse, no matter how I look at it, it seems to be her first child." Xiao Chen's heart trembled when he heard Qingji's words. He frowned and asked Qinggu, "What do you mean?" "It's like this." Qinggu slowly explained. "The pulse of the first child is usually a little unstable or fluctuating. However, the pulse of the second child is much smoother. We all know that ninth sister-in-law has been pregnant before, so this pulse should be stable. However, when I checked just now, I found that this pulse is very unstable. It's more like the pulse of the first child." Qinggu said with a frown. Xiao Chen and Jingyu both frowned when they heard Qingji's words. "Moreover, I found out from the ninth sister-in-law's pulse that this is indeed her first time pregnant. This is really strange. Could it be that she was pregnant with a fake baby before?" Qingji's eyes were full of doubts. "That's right. The ninth sister-in-law is pregnant with a fake baby." Chapter 1488. This. Jingyu and Xiao Chen were both stunned. "The fetus will only stabilize after 3 months. I'll know what's going on after another diagnosis. Don't worry, ninth brother and ninth sister-in-law. The fetus is fine. I'll prescribe some medicine for ninth sister-in-law to take." Qinggu changed the topic. "Okay." Xiao Chen nodded slowly. Qinggu gave a few more instructions before leaving with a heart full of doubts. After Xiao Chen sent Qinggu off, he couldn't wait to return to the room. Xiao Bai's eyes were filled with curiosity as he lay on the edge of the bed. "Mother is pregnant? Does that mean I'll have a younger brother or sister in the future?" Xiao Bai blinked as he looked at Jingyu in surprise. "Yes, someone's here to steal your mother." Shangguan Linglan stood by Jingyu's bed and said with a faint smile when he heard Xiao Bai's words. "Of course not." Xiao Bai looked up at Shangguan Linglan and said, "I finally have a younger brother or sister. I'll definitely protect them in the future." Xiao Bai said very seriously. His small appearance made Shangguan Linglan laugh out loud. "Little brat." Shangguan Linglan reached out and patted Xiao Bai's head with a smile. "Go play outside." After Shangguan Linglan pulled Xiao Bai away, he sat down by Jingyu's bed. His eyes fell on Jingyu's stomach and he frowned slightly as he said, "Jingyu, what Qinggu just said won't affect the fetus in your stomach, right? It should be fine." Jingyu shook her head slightly and raised her hand to touch her stomach. She had a very strange feeling. This child actually came at the right time. "It's good that you're fine." When Shangguan Linglan heard Jingyu's words, he slowly let out a sigh of relief and said, "Now that everything has come to an end, your most important task now is to take care of the fetus and give birth to the child in your stomach safely." Yes. "My great General Shangguan." Jingyu heard Shangguan Linglan's words and widened her eyes as she said with a smile. "You silly girl." Shangguan Linglan laughed out loud. The two of them looked very unhappy in the room. Shangguan Linglan didn't sit for long before she left. Xiao Chen also came in. It didn't take long for the news of Jingyu's pregnancy to spread. Everyone's eyes were full of surprise. The 9th imperial concubine was pregnant. Because of Jingyu's pregnancy, they probably couldn't leave the Holy Family for the time being. The reason was very simple. During this period of time, Jingyu simply wanted to vomit whenever she saw something. She vomited so badly that she naturally couldn't sit on the boat. They could only wait for a few more days until Jingyu's fetus stabilized before they could set off. Jingyu really wanted to go back, but he couldn't joke about Jingyu's child. He could only endure it. Speaking of which, it wasn't safe to take care of the fetus anywhere, but it was especially safe on the Holy Family's island. If someone or a boat came here, Jingyu and Xiaochen would know instantly. Moreover, the Holy Family was so secluded that ordinary people couldn't come here. In this way, Jingyu, Xiaochen, and the others had no choice but to stop at the bund of the Holy Family. They were surrounded by the sea and the boat was anchored on the beach. Soldiers and people would play on the beach during the day or go out to sea to catch fish. At night, they would sleep in the room on the boat. It was very comfortable. Chapter 1489. Why did you come out again? Didn't I tell you not to stand in the wind? Jingyu stood on the deck with a faint smile in her eyes. She looked at Hellion Theo's figure on the beach as Feng Maching chased him around. Xiaochen. Jingyu turned her head slightly. Xiaochen's eyes were filled with displeasure when he saw Jingyu come out in such thin clothes. He raised his hand and covered Jingyu with the cloak in his hand. I'm fine. I've been cooped up in the house every day. Jingyu glared at Xiaochen coquettishly. When she saw Xiaochen buckle the cloak for her without any explanation, her eyes were filled with helplessness. Perhaps it was because of the tragedy of the previous child that Xiaochen felt especially sorry for this child. He never thought that this life would be so weak. Now, Xiaochen wished that he could stick to Jingyu all the time and carefully protect her. Don't catch a cold. Xiaochen saw that Jingyu had put on the cloak and relaxed his brows slightly. It's fine. Qinggu is here. Jingyu blinked at Xiaochen and said, besides, no one can hurt me here. The corners of Jingyu's mouth curled up slightly. She raised her hand to touch her belly, and her eyes were filled with gentleness. I want to go down for a walk. Jingyu turned her head and blinked her eyes. She looked at Xiaochen with a pitiful expression and said, no. Xiaochen refused without even thinking about it. I'll go down for a walk for a while. Jingyu looked at Xiaochen pitifully and said, I feel bad that you're locking me up like this. Didn't Qinggu say something? It's good for the fetus to be in a good mood. If I'm not happy, it's not good for our child. Jingyu spoke very seriously. When Xiaochen heard Jingyu's words, his frown deepened. His pitch-black eyes stared intently at Jingyu. In the end, he sighed helplessly. All right, I can only go down for an hour. I'll accompany you. Xiaochen quietly looked at Jingyu and said, okay. When Jingyu heard Xiaochen's reply, she immediately nodded happily. Her eyes were filled with joy. She walked cheerfully and finally got off the boat. When her feet stepped on the soft sand, Jingyu's face was filled with joy. Xiaochen followed closely beside Jingyu. He held Jingyu's hand with a nervous expression. On the other side, when Feng Maching, who was tired from chasing after her, and Hellion Theo, who was about to collapse from running, saw Jingyu and Xiaochen, their eyes widened in surprise. Isn't this the 9th Emperor's and the 9th Imperial concubine? Feng Maching looked at Xiaochen curiously and said, you're willing to let your precious wife out? Stand further away. When Xiaochen heard Feng Maching's words, his expression didn't change at all. He calmly pursed his lips and said, don't bump into you. When Feng Maching heard Xiaochen's words, the corner of his mouth twitched violently. They were at least 2 meters apart, right? How far did he want to go? Hellion Theo, who was standing in the distance, saw this scene and smiled faintly. When he saw Xiaochen walking away with Jingyu, his eyes flickered slightly. Feng Maching turned around angrily, but when he turned around he saw Hellion Theo's gaze. Feng Maching's expression slowly changed, but he hid the look in the depths of his eyes. Big brother Ling, look at this. Feng Yu rolled up her trousers and held a very beautiful shell in her hand as she shouted at Feng Ling excitedly. Feng Ling sat on a reef at the side and looked at the sea in the distance in a daze. Chapter 1490. Brother Ling. Feng Yu called out to Feng Ling for a long time, But Feng Ling didn't respond to her. When she looked over, she realized that Feng Ling was completely lost in thought. Feng Yu looked at Feng Ling and frowned. She ran over to Feng Ling's side with her short legs. Only then did Feng Ling turn her head slightly to look at Feng Yu and ask in confusion, "What's wrong?" "Brother Ling, you haven't played with me in a long time." Feng Yu pouted and looked at Feng Ling unhappily. Go play by yourself." Feng Ling smiled faintly and patted Feng Yu's head. Feng Yu glared at Feng Ling and said, "Brother Ling, are you still thinking about that woman in Yangzhou City?" Feng Ling heard Feng Yu's words and lowered his head awkwardly. He said, "Child, what do you know?" "I'm not a child." Feng Yu slapped Feng Ling's hand away. Her eyes were filled with displeasure. She looked at Feng Ling angrily and said, "Brother Ling clearly likes Miss Feng Ju, why didn't you say so? You waited until Miss Feng Ju was with someone else, then you're here feeling sad. You don't understand." Feng Ling looked up at the lights in the distance and lowered his head slightly. He said, "Miss Feng Ju never had me in her eyes. I really don't understand." Feng Yu sat down beside Feng Ling and said in a conflicted tone, "Brother likes Miss Feng Ju. No matter what, you have to convey your feelings. Could it be that Miss Feng Ju told brother very clearly that she doesn't like you?" "She didn't." Feng Ling lowered his head in annoyance. "Since she didn't, then isn't it?" Feng Yu looked at Feng Ling seriously and said, "Brother has to say his feelings. I really don't understand you adults. Why do you like to keep everything to yourself? Whether you like or hate her, just say it." Feng Yu glared at Feng Ling and mumbled to herself. Then, she ignored Feng Ling and walked off the reef, continuing to play in the sea. She didn't care about anyone and had fun on the beach. Feng Ling was stunned for a long time after hearing Feng Yu's words. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that Feng Yu's words made sense. As expected of a child, her thoughts were clear. However, it was too late to say anything now. Feng Ling shook his head with a bitter smile, but his heart felt much more relieved. On the golden beach, Shangguan Linglan was walking barefoot on the sand, treading on the water as she played. "Are you done playing? Hurry up and put on your shoes." Second Xing looked at Shangguan Linglan's barefoot appearance and his tightly knitted brows did not loosen at all. "I only played for a while." Shangguan Linglan frowned unhappily when she heard this. She looked at Second Xing angrily and said, "I didn't ask you to follow me. Give me the shoes." Shangguan Linglan said as she reached out to snatch them. Second Xing decisively hid the shoes behind his back and looked at Shangguan Linglan with his eyebrows raised. "Hey!" When Shangguan Linglan saw Xing Er's reaction, he felt a burst of righteousness. He glared at Xing Er with a girlish cuteness. "Linglan." Xing Er suddenly looked at Shangguan Linglan seriously. That calm call stunned Shangguan Linglan. He blinked and looked at Xing Er with a hint of confusion in his eyes. Chapter 1491. After we return to the country, I will propose marriage to General Shangguan. Will you marry me? Xing Er pursed his lips slightly. Under the orange sunlight, Xing Er looked at Shangguan Linglan with a solemn expression. The way his pitch-black eyes stared at Shanghai Linglan made Shanghai Linglan's face instantly turn red. "I've thought about it for a long time. I think I should ask you first." Xing Er looked at Shangguan Linglan quietly and said, "I've wanted to propose marriage to General Shangguan for a long time. However, with the war pressing on, there were simply too many things that came one after the other. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to give you a peaceful life. That's why I kept delaying the marriage proposal." Xing Er slowly lowered his eyes and looked at Shangguan Linglan as he said, "Now that the war situation has stabilized, what comes next is Master and Madam's business. That's why I was thinking." Xing Er paused and looked at Shangguan Linglan uneasily as he asked, "Linglan, are you willing to marry me?" Shangguan Linglan's heart started beating uncontrollably. A faint blush appeared on her fair face as she turned her head slightly. She bit her lip and said softly, "My father is a person who cares about his reputation. When you come to my residence, remember to treat him well, of course." Xing Er agreed naturally. However, after he agreed, he suddenly froze as though he had thought of something. He looked at Shangguan Linglong in shock and asked, Linglong, what do you mean? You're agreeing to marry me? You idiot. If I don't marry you, am I supposed to marry someone else? Shangguan Linglong glared at Xing Er and said unhappily, No. Xing Er didn't even think as he stared at Shangguan Linglong and said, If anyone other than me dares to marry you, I'll kill them. Shangguan Linglong looked at Xing Er's expression and laughed out loud. What are you laughing at? Xing Er looked at Shangguan Linglong's smiling face and said, Besides, other than me, who else dares to marry you? Hey! Xing Er, what do you mean by that? Shangguan Linglong's smiling face instantly darkened when he heard Xing Er's words. He glared at Xing Er and said angrily, Are you saying that no one wants me? Second Xing looked at Shangguan Linglong's angry appearance, but the corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile as he answered seriously. Xing Er. You bastard! Shangguan Linglong looked at Xing Er's smirk and was instantly enraged. Without another word he chased after Xing Er. Xing Er grabbed Shangguan Linglong's shoes and quickly ran away. Stop right there! Shangguan Linglong roared. Xing Er naturally didn't listen. After running for a while, he suddenly turned back. Before Shangguan Linglong could react, he suddenly carried Shangguan Linglong in his arms. Aya! Shangguan Linglong exclaimed and quickly hugged Xing Er's neck. I'm very happy. Second Xing lowered his head slightly to look at Shangguan Linglong in his arms. Once again he emphasized this sentence seriously. The faint blush on his cheeks and the uncontrollable curl of his lips all showed that Second Xing was really happy. Shangguan Linglong lowered her eyes slightly, a faint blush on her face. Everything was so warm and moving. Chapter 1492. Suyu was sitting on a reef not far away. Seeing this scene with her own eyes, the corners of her mouth curved into a faint smile. Her pair of calm eyes were stained with a touch of deep sorrow. She raised her hands slightly and tightened the cloak on her body a little. She turned her head and continued to look at the vast sea. Her pitch-black eyes carried a faint trace of nostalgia. Just as Suyu was lost in her thoughts, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned her head slightly to look. Lingyong? What's the matter? Suyu looked at the person standing in front of her and asked with a slight frown. Palace Lord, you haven't fully recovered yet. Don't be outside. The wind is strong. Lingyong was standing in the direction where the wind was blowing. Lingyong was standing there, blocking the wind that was blowing towards Suyu. I'm fine. Suyu smiled helplessly at Lingyong. Since when have I become so weak? Suyu slowly raised her head to look at Lingyong and said, I'm the Palace Lord of Constellation Palace. It's just a small injury. It's not a big deal. Palace Master? Lingyong frowned in disapproval. Suyu also frowned. The way she looked at Lingyong made Lingyong swallow the words he wanted to say. He lowered his head slightly and said, This subordinate has been meddlesome. You may leave. Suyu said indifferently and turned her gaze away. She looked indifferently at the scenery in the distance. She looked at the sea, as if she didn't want to say anything. Lingyong looked at Suyu's expression and frowned deeply. However, he couldn't say a word. He just looked at Suyu quietly and bowed slightly in response. Then he turned and left. Lingyong had only walked a short distance when he saw Xing Yi standing on the other side of the beach. Xing Yi naturally saw Lingyong as well. Their gazes met for a moment. Xing Yi slowly frowned. Lingyong retracted his gaze and turned to leave. Xing Yi looked at Lingyong's back as he left. His frown deepened. He lowered his eyes slightly as if he was thinking about something. He slowly turned his head and looked at Suyu's back again. He was silent on the spot for a moment. Then he walked towards Suyu's direction. Didn't I tell you to go down? Why are you still here? When Suyu heard the footsteps behind her again, she frowned and spoke in a displeased manner. She had just finished speaking when she turned around to look, but what she saw stunned her. Xing Yi, who was dressed in black, stood behind Suyu. Hearing Suyu's impatient words, he seemed a little surprised. He blinked slightly as if he was surprised. Why are you here? After a while, Suyu lowered her head and asked. It's windy here. After Xing Yi said this sentence lightly, he stepped forward and took Su Yu's hand. Without saying anything, he dragged Su Yu down. Su Yu's eyes widened slightly. She looked down at Xing Yi's hand that was holding hers. The expression on her face changed slightly. She slowly lowered her head and allowed Xing Yi to pull her to sit beside the reef. It was just right to block the strong wind. Su Yu bit her lips and glanced at Xing Yi. Xing Yi didn't seem to feel anything. He gently let go of Su Yu's hand and said calmly, "Your body hasn't recovered yet. Don't keep being blown by the wind." Chapter 1493. Su Yu replied softly and sat on the sand. Beside her was Xing Yi. Su Yu seemed a little reserved, but Xing Yi seemed much calmer. His eyes were indifferent as he looked at the scenery in the distance without any change in expression. Xing Yi and Su Yu's actions fell into Ling Yong's eyes. Ling Yong's heart trembled violently as if he had thought of something. His hands that were hanging by his side clenched tightly. He took a deep look at Xing Yi and turned to leave. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen walked on the beach hand in hand. A pair of indifferent eyes looked at the scenery around them, and the corners of their lips curled up slightly. Only at this moment could they feel a faint sense of tranquility. The scenery here is really beautiful. Jing Yu looked at the blue sea and said in distress, "If only I wasn't pregnant, I could go into the sea to play now." Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu's words and was speechless. He looked at Jing Yu and said, "When the child is born and raised quickly, wouldn't we be able to bring the child here?" "That's true." Jing Yu nodded in agreement. She looked at Xiao Chen and said, "Xiao Chen, do you think the baby in my stomach is a boy or a girl? What should we name the child?" Xiao Chen heard Jing Yu's words and thought very seriously. He frowned and said, "Naming is a very important matter. When we go back, we have to find someone to calculate it." Fifth. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen and said, "How about we give the child a nickname?" Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and nodded. "The nickname will be, what should we call it?" Jing Yu thought seriously and smiled. She said in surprise, "The nickname will be Potato." Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu's serious expression and was looking forward to it. However, when he heard Jing Yu's words, the corner of his mouth suddenly twitched. He turned to look at Jing Yu's serious expression and didn't dare to say anything. "Let's call it Potato." Jing Yu looked very satisfied with the name she came up with. She said, "What a good nickname. It makes me want to fry it and eat it." Was she really his biological mother? Xiao Chen's mouth twitched. Looking at Jing Yu's happy expression, there was only one thought in his mind. Fortunately, this was only a nickname. If Jing Yu came up with a name, would it be Sour and Spicy Shredded Potato? Poor child. He hadn't even been born, but his future was already set in his mother's stomach. He would be famous all over the continent with the name Potato. Peaceful days always passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed. Qingge came to check on Jing Yu again. Jing Yu sat on the chair. During this period of time, Jing Yu had eaten a lot. Jing Yu could clearly feel that Jing Yu's body had grown bigger and her face was much brighter. Xiao Chen naturally stood by the side and asked Qingge with a slight frown, "How is it?" "The fetus is very stable." Qingge slowly withdrew his hand and said, "And I can confirm that this is ninth sister-in-law's first child." "I really don't understand. How could this be ninth sister-in-law's first child?" Chapter 1494. When Xiao Chen heard Qing Ji's words, he frowned as he looked at Qingge and asked, "You mean to say that the pregnancy was fake?" Qingge slowly nodded and said, "For the time being, I don't know what happened to the fake fetus. Now that ninth sister-in-law's fetus is stable, we can go back and let the midwife examine it. We'll know whether or not it was her first pregnancy." "Although I'm a doctor, I don't know much about pregnant women," Qingge said as his cheeks turned red. He was very embarrassed. Xiao Chen and Jing Yu both nodded in understanding. After asking a few questions, they were completely at ease. Jing Yu didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. They couldn't delay their trip for a month. On the same day, they set off for Yangzhou. They probably wouldn't come back to this part of the sea. Jing Yu raised her head and looked at the surrounding sea. There was a faint smile in her eyes. She raised her hand and touched her slightly bulging belly. Her eyes were filled with gentleness. Yangzhou City was as prosperous as ever. When Jing Yu and Xiaochen returned with a group of people, it seemed that nothing had changed in Yangzhou City. I heard that Miss Feng Ju's song could topple a city. I wonder if I have the chance to listen to it? In the Drunken Phoenix house, there were countless people who wanted to see Feng Ju's face every day. There were even more people who wanted to listen to Feng Ju's complete song. However, in the Drunken Phoenix house, no one had the honor to listen to it. Miss. The servant girl's voice came from the door. Feng Ju was lying on the bed, bored. When she heard this voice, she frowned and said, "Get rid of those annoying flies." But before the maidservant at the door could finish her words, she heard her mistress's impatient voice. She immediately stopped talking and helplessly lowered her head. Jing Lang had almost used his fastest speed to reach this place. Seeing so many young geniuses standing in front of the Drunken Phoenix house, he immediately frowned. Hearing the way these people were fighting, he couldn't help but find it funny and the corners of his mouth curled up. "Young Master Li, don't embarrass yourself here." The group of rich and powerful young masters were all wearing incomparably luxurious clothes. Each of them was elegantly dressed. "If you can make Miss Feng Ju cough, we'll all be convinced." Pa. A man wearing a purple brocade robe looked at the blue-robed young master and said with disdain, "Feng Kaixing, how powerful do you think you are? You can't even see the corner of Miss Feng Ju's clothes." The blue-robed young master said angrily, All right. This young master has seen Miss Feng Ju's back. Don't embarrass yourself here." Another man wearing a black robe seemed to be very pleased with himself as he played with the fan in his hand. Jing Lang stood to the side and listened. He originally thought that the black-robed young master's words would be criticized by everyone. However, he didn't expect that when the black-robed young master spoke, everyone would suddenly stop talking. Jing Lang was immediately curious. How did this young master see Miss Feng Ju? Jing Lang asked curiously. The black-robed man turned his head to look at Jing Lang. His eyes sized up Jing Lang, and when he saw how plain Jing Lang's clothes were, a look of disdain appeared in the black-robed man's eyes. Chapter 1495. Of course I've received Miss Feng Ju's favor. The black-robed man looked at Jing Lang and said, "Do you think a poor brat like you can covet Miss Feng Ju? Get lost, get lost." Young Master Zhu's words are wrong. I can see that this young master's manner of speech is not ordinary. Perhaps he is someone that Miss Feng Ju admires. The people at the side heard the conversation between Jing Lang and the black-clothed man and immediately stepped forward to speak. With his poor and pedantic appearance, if Miss Feng Ju can look him in the eye, this young master will call him grandfather. The black-clothed man said disdainfully when he heard this. "I don't have a grandson as old as you." When Jing Lang heard the black-robed man's words, a faint smile appeared in his eyes. He seemed to be very serious as he said this. The black-robed man's face darkened when he heard this. He took a step forward and was about to speak when young Master Li, who was the first to speak, said, "In my opinion, if that's the case, why don't we make a bet? Let's see if young Master Zhu can make Miss Feng Ju appear or if this young master can make Miss Feng Ju appear. Let's bet. Do you think I'm afraid of him?" Young Master Zhu looked at Jing Lang provocatively and said, "Looking at your poor and destitute appearance, I'm sure you don't have the money. I'll bet with you. If you lose, you'll crawl under my crotch. Kneel down and kowtow 3 times, call me father, and get out of Yangzhou City." Young Master Zhu looked at Jing Lang arrogantly. His words were as if he was certain that he would win. These words caused everyone to laugh out loud. Jing Lang nodded slowly. He didn't care about these people's laughter at all. The corner of his mouth curled up into a faint smile as he easily agreed. "Young Master Zhu, what if you lose?" Jing Lang's quick response caused everyone to be stunned. Jing Lang's sudden question stunned young Master Zhu. He was stunned for a moment, but then he suddenly burst into laughter. "Pa, what did you just say?" You really think you can win? Pa. That young Master Zhu laughed mockingly, and a group of people also began to laugh. It's still necessary to have such thoughts. What if I'm a blind cat running into a dead rat? Jing Lang didn't seem to be angry at all. He smiled calmly as he looked at young Master Zhu. Good. If you win, this young master will kneel down and call you grandfather. Young Master Zhu said arrogantly. Jing Lang smirked and said, there's no need to go through so much trouble. If you lose, I want something from you. What is it? When young Master Zhu heard Jing Lang's words, he was slightly taken aback. He looked at his body and saw his money pouch. He immediately understood what Jing Lang meant and laughed out loud. Pa. No problem. Young Master Zhu answered so casually. Jing Lang nodded slightly and did not say anything. He looked at the crowd and said, who will be the banker? Let me come down. The person who spoke was young Master Li, who had made the suggestion. While Jing Lang and young Master Zhu were talking, a few other young masters had also set up a gambling house and placed their bets. They were all betting to see if Jing Lang or young Master Zhu would win. Chapter 1496. No matter how one looked at it, the winner was young Master Zhu. However, there was a small group of people who were hesitant when they saw Jing Lang's calm and composed demeanor. They decided to take a gamble after all. Young Master Li looked at the two people who were preparing and placed his own bet as well. He took out almost all of his money and bet it on Jing Lang. Young Master Li, are you here to lose money to avoid disaster? The person who set up the gambling house looked at the banknotes young Master Li threw over and his eyes widened in surprise. He turned to look at young Master Li and asked, this is all of my money. Young Master Li smiled faintly and casually. Then we won't stand on ceremony and accept it. The people behind him smiled when they saw young Master Li's actions. Whether you can take it or not will depend on your abilities. Young Master Li smiled faintly and his eyes were filled with provocation. When the crowd saw young Master Li like this, they all took out their money. Originally, this was just a small bet. However, who would have thought that after this situation, it would become a huge bet? Brother, I'm betting all of my money on you. Young Master Li saw that everyone had placed their bets and the corners of his mouth twitched painfully. If he won, it would be a huge sum of money. However, if he lost, young Master Li raised his hand and patted Jing Lang's shoulder as he spoke. When Jing Lang heard young Master Li's words, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. He didn't expect that there would be people betting on him. Young Master Zhu walked over and looked at Jing Lang with disdain. You go first. I'll give you a chance to say a few words. Young Master Zhu is too polite. Young Master Zhu, please go first. Jing Lang bowed slightly and said to young Master Zhu, this young master has given you a chance. Since you don't want it, this young master won't be polite. Young Master Zhu frowned as he looked at Jing Lang, before he turned around and walked down the stairs of the Drunken Phoenix Inn. Everyone's eyes followed young Master Zhu. The liveliness here attracted a lot of people. There were also a lot of people outside who came here to place their bets after learning about the situation here. It wasn't until young Master Li walked under the windowsill that the gambling house was prohibited from placing bets. Everyone's eyes were on young Master Li. Miss Fengjue, I am the eldest son of the Zhu family, Zhu Jin. Last time, I was fortunate enough to see Miss Fengjue visit my home. I wonder if Miss Fengjue has the time to come over and sit for a while. My mother really likes Miss Fengjue's music. After young Master Zhu introduced himself, Jing Lang almost laughed out loud. Zhu Jin? What kind of strange name was that? After Zhu Jin finished speaking, the surroundings fell into a short silence. Everyone looked towards the attic. Everyone knew that Miss Fengjue had been to Zhu Jin's residence. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people who thought that Zhu Jin had a higher chance of winning. Zhu Jin's heart was also a little nervous. Looking at the attic, his heart thumped, as if he was uneasy. So it's young Master Zhu. Many thanks for my mother's concern. If I have the time, I will naturally pay a visit to your residence. Under the nervous weight, everyone thought that Miss Fengjue wouldn't speak. Who would have thought that Miss Fengjue would actually speak? Chapter 1497. She even said that she would visit the Zhu mansion. Suddenly, the entire crowd was boiling. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear. The way they looked at Zhu Jin had changed. Zhu Jin himself was also stunned for a long time. Although he had always said that he had seen Miss Fengjue, he had never seen her before. However, Zhu Jin had said such words in the past, but it didn't have any effect. Today, she braced herself. At worst, both of them wouldn't be able to invite Fengjue, but she didn't expect that Fengjue would actually speak up today. Miss Fengjue, are you serious? When will you leave? Zhu Jin quickly spoke again. However, this time, there was no response from Fengjue. Although it was a pity, it was enough. Zhu Jin successfully made Fengjue speak and even said that she would go to the Zhu mansion. What else was there to compete? Almost everyone felt that Zhu Jin had won. Cough cough. Jing Lang, who was left aside, slowly coughed a few times and said, I don't know if young Master Zhu has finished speaking. Is it my turn now? Only then did Zhu Jin fall into great joy. Before she could recover, she heard Jing Lang's words and suddenly sneered. She said very disdainfully, You really think you're something? Since you want to humiliate yourself so much, this young master will let you go. Zhu Jin looked at Jing Lang with disdain and stepped aside. He watched Jing Lang step forward. His eyes were full of disdain. The people standing outside were also full of disdain. They were all waiting to see a joke. Young Master Li on the side sighed deeply. It seemed that he had gambled wrongly this time. He never thought that Fengjue would actually speak and say such words. It was really surprising. Jing Lang stood quietly under the windowsill. There was a faint look in his eyes. He slightly raised his head and looked at the closed windowsill. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a faint smile. Miss Fengjue, I am Jing Lang. I would like to see Miss Fengjue. Jing Lang didn't put on any airs, nor did he make any introduction. He just calmly and casually spat out these words, causing the crowd of spectators to fall into a strange silence. He originally thought that Jing Lang would say something, but he didn't expect Jing Lang to just casually say this sentence and then stand there waiting. There was not the slightest sound coming from the attic. Everyone's eyes were filled with sneers, as if they were used to this kind of situation. When young Master Li saw Jing Lang's appearance, the folding fan in his hand suddenly hit his own head fiercely. What a miscalculation! Jing Lang looked at the tightly shut window and helplessly touched the tip of his nose. He continued to say, It seems that Miss Fengjue doesn't want to see me. Then I won't disturb you. I'll take my leave first. Jing Lang said slowly and very calmly bowed towards Fengjue's window. He turned around and walked away. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Stop right there. Just when Jing Lang took 3 steps and everyone was ready to watch a good show, the tightly shut window suddenly opened. A delicate voice came from the window. The tightly shut window opened. A beautiful figure stood by the window. That beautiful face. Fengjue's appearance was still so moving. However, when she saw Jing Lang's dusty clothes, Fengjue's eyes immediately moistened. Chapter 1498. Miss Fengjue? Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. Pairs of eyes looked at the person standing on the windowsill. I'm back. Jing Lang slowly turned around and stood under the windowsill. He looked up at Fengjue and said. Fengjue looked at Jing Lang and her heart trembled violently. She suddenly raised her hand and closed the window. Ugh. Jing Lang looked at the closed window and touched the tip of his nose. He seemed to be a little embarrassed. I don't know, does this count as a win? Jing Lang smiled faintly and turned around to look at the people behind him who were completely stunned. How could this be? Zhu Jin's eyes were filled with disbelief. The way he looked at Jing Lang changed. What? Does young Master Zhu want to renege on the debt? Jing Lang looked at Zhu Jin and smiled faintly. He casually said, Or, do you think you've won? When Zhu Jin was about to speak, he suddenly heard a commotion coming from the pavilion. Everyone's eyes turned towards the direction of the commotion. When the commotion came, everyone turned their heads to look. Among the crowd, a figure appeared at the door. It was Fengju's figure. She was wearing a white robe. She stood quietly at the door and looked in the direction of Jinglang. The moment Fengju appeared, everyone's eyes widened. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. They never thought that Fengju would personally come down and appear in front of everyone. Everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment. Miss Fengju? Zhu Zhen originally wanted to speak, but he did not expect to see Fengju's figure. Suddenly, his eyes were filled with astonishment. Jinglang also looked at Fengju. Zhu Zhen still wanted to speak, but he realized that Fengju's eyes were not on him. Her pair of dark eyes were looking straight at Jinglang. Everyone obviously noticed this scene. Suddenly, everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment. Could it be that Miss Fengju and this poor boy knew each other? Everyone's eyes were filled with doubt as they widened their eyes. Immediately after, they seemed to have thought of something. Before they could figure it out, they suddenly saw Fengju, who had never shown a smile to anyone else, walk towards Jinglang. This is... Young Master Li saw this scene and his eyes were filled with doubt. He turned his head to look at Jinglang, but found that Jinglang's eyes did not have the slightest fluctuation. Just when everyone was still thinking about what happened, Fengju suddenly lifted her skirt and rushed towards Jinglang. Under everyone's astonished gaze, Fengju threw herself into the arms of a man under everyone's gaze. Jinglang didn't hesitate to reach out and catch Fengju. He hugged Fengju tightly and his hands tightened. "You're finally back." Fengju hugged Jinglang tightly, ignoring the cries of surprise from the surrounding people. His eyes were filled with surprise as he slowly opened his mouth and said, I thought you wouldn't come back. How could that be? I said I would come back, so I will definitely come back." Jinglang's eyes were filled with gentleness. He raised his hand and touched Fengju's hair. Chapter 1499. The surrounding people were all dumbfounded. Their eyes were filled with astonishment as they looked at the two people hugging each other without any hesitation. No one understood what was going on. Miss Fengju did not tell anyone about this. But the situation now? What was going on? If the crowd was surprised, then Zhu Zhen was extremely embarrassed. A moment ago, he was so confident in his words, but he did not expect that this poor kid, who he thought would lose, would give everyone a fierce slap in the face. This slap was so loud and clear that Zhu Zhen was unable to raise her head. It should be known that Zhu Mansion was a little famous in Yangzhou City. If it was not so, how could Fengju come to visit them? Zhu Zhen stood on the side and his whole body was trembling with anger. Everyone looked at Zhu Zhen with a mocking expression, which made Zhu Zhen feel even more ashamed. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to kill Jinglang, this poor kid. Looking at Jinglang's tattered clothes, he knew that he was not from Yangzhou City. In Yangzhou City, there was no one that Zhu Zhen did not dare to provoke. Not to mention this stinking brat. Zhu Zhen's eyes were full of murderous intent as he looked at Jinglang. Jinglang slowly let go of Fengju's body. A moment ago, Fengju was too excited and did not pay attention to her image. Now that she came back to her senses, she was shocked to find that she was hugging Jinglang. She suddenly felt that her face and ears were red. Being seen by so many people, Fengju was very embarrassed. She carefully looked at Jinglang, but when she saw Jinglang's burning eyes, her cheeks became even redder. She glared at Jinglang, her eyes were full of blame. "It's all your fault." Fengju coquettishly glared at Jinglang, but the corners of her mouth curled up into a faint arc. Such a shy appearance made the surrounding swordsmen widen their eyes and stare straight at Fengju. No matter who she was in front of, Miss Fengju was as cold as ice, but now in the arms of another man, she was so shy. It was really surprising. Jinglang looked at Fengju's expression and laughed out loud. He grabbed Fengju's hand and turned to look at Zhu Zhen. He said, "Young Master Zhu, isn't it time to fulfill your promise?" What? When Zhu Zhen suddenly heard Jinglang's words, she was slightly taken aback. There was some doubt in her eyes. "Did I win this round of the bet? I said that if I win, I want something from you, young Master Zhu." Jing Lang looked at Zhu Zhen and said indifferently. Hee hee. Zhu Zhen smiled faintly and said, yes, you can take whatever you want. Jing Lang looked at Zhu Zhen and nodded calmly. All right, since that's the case, I'll take it myself. After saying that, Jing Lang turned to look around. His gaze fell upon a man wielding a sword. Young master, may I borrow the sword in your hand? Jing Lang slowly walked in front of the man, cupped his hands slightly, and asked, okay. When the man suddenly heard Jing Lang's question, there was a faint doubt in his eyes, but he still slowly nodded. He raised his hand and handed over the sword in his hand. He did not know why Jing Lang suddenly wanted the sword. Chapter 1500. Thank you. Jing Lang took the sword and politely thanked the man again. Zhu Zhen and young Master Li's eyes were full of doubt. They didn't know why Jing Lang suddenly wanted this sword. However, they couldn't guess what he wanted to do with it when they saw Jing Lang's smiling appearance. Feng Zhu looked at Jing Lang's series of actions with a face full of confusion. He blinked his eyes and looked at Jing Lang. Jing Lang walked towards Zhu Zhen step by step. He didn't draw his sword, nor did he speak. Zhu Zhen looked at Jing Lang walking closer and unconsciously took a step back. However, after taking a step back, he quickly stopped. If he took a step back in front of a poor boy, wouldn't it make him look particularly cowardly? How could he retreat? Thinking of this, Zhu Zhen quickly stopped and looked up at Jing Lang. His eyes were full of arrogance. He didn't think this boy would dare to do anything. If you want something from this young master, just take it. Zhu Zhen smiled at Jing Lang disdainfully and said in a very uncalm manner, since young Master Zhu said so, then I won't be polite. When Jing Lang heard Zhu Zhen's words, he calmly nodded and smiled at Zhu Zhen. He slowly raised the sword in his hand and said, excuse me. Jing Lang's words were obviously directed at the sword in his hand. After speaking, before anyone could react, Jing Lang suddenly unsheathed the sword and stabbed towards Zhu Zhen's lower body. Ah! When Zhu Zhen heard Jing Lang's words, he was still a little stunned. He didn't expect Jing Lang to do such a thing. An intense pain came from his lower body and an earth-shattering scream sounded in the open space. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Zhu Zhen fell to the ground in extreme pain. The blood flowing out from between her legs was so frightening that it made Feng Zhu's eyes widen little by little. At this moment, everyone silently took a step back. Suddenly, they felt a chill between their legs. The painful scream shocked everyone. Looking at Jing Lang, who was still standing there with a calm face, everyone shivered. The way they looked at Jing Lang changed. This is what I want. Jing Lang smiled as he looked at young Master Zhu. He casually took out a piece of cloth from his body and wiped the blood off the sword. He walked towards the person with the sword and said calmly, "Thank you for your sword, young master." The man who had lent him the sword swallowed slightly when he saw Jing Lang handing over the sword. He stretched out his hands stiffly to take the sword and watched as Jing Lang walked back once again. "How dare you!" Zhu Zhen almost fainted from the pain, but fortunately, she didn't faint. Her forehead was full of fine lines, and she stared at Jing Lang and said, "This young master will kill you." Her voice was filled with grief and indignation as she glared at Jing Lang. The surrounding spectators swallowed hard. There was only one thought in their minds. Zhu Zhen's life was over, but Jing Lang was going to lose his life. Zhu Zhen wasn't an ordinary person. Whether it was in the underworld or in the officialdom, she had connections. Now, such a thing had happened. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.